Futurist Jim Carroll from the home broadcast studio. Look, I've been trying to take on some of the topics which relate to our eventual post-pandemic economy and the trends which are shaping us into our future. I'm a futurist, and it's been my job for over 25 years to work with some of the largest organizations around the world to put in perspective the reality of where we're going next. And look, I will be the first to admit, I miss my old job. I miss the excitement of going out on a big stage in a big conference room, helping to shape the mind and attitudes of people in a whole variety of industries. So I'm very much a part of the global meetings, conventions, and conference industry, and I have been for 25 years. Today, I want to talk about the reality that is unfolding in this industry as it struggles to figure out what to do next, and maybe the reality that it can't quite come to grips with its future. Look, over the last several weeks, there have been a number of events in the industry, notably one in Orlando, where they've tried to prove that it is possible to bring together groups of people in a large conference center, in a large convention center, if they are socially distanced, if we have the proper protocols in place, if we do all of these safety things that are necessary, maybe we can go back to where we were, before the global pandemic hit. Well, reports, are coming out that it might not be working as well as we thought. That, the protocols that we are putting in place, we are starting to see a number of reports online that this and other events have not gone too well. And it's not going too well because what is apparent is the division that is happening in society at large as to the scope of the pandemic, what we need to do to mitigate and manage its challenges, and what we need to do as a society to try to move forward. The division is in the industry in the same way that it is in throughout our global society. And so where has it ended up? Well, last night on social media, on one of the Facebook groups that is an industry group of which I am part, there was a report that this event in Orlando actually had 3 positive cases. Nobody knows if this is directly related to the event itself. Nobody knows if somehow a failure occurred at the event. But there were reports coming out on social media that at this event, there were groups of people who were choosing not to wear masks. There were situations in which people did not feel comfortable with going into this type of event. And clearly the industry is trying to do what it can, but it's not going well. And I've got the utmost respect for meeting planners, meeting professionals, event professionals, members of MPI. These are some of the most organized people I've ever known. And, they've managed to bring me into a tremendous number of events, and everything runs like clockwork. And obviously, they are struggling right now to understand what can we actually do to try to bring our old industry back? Can we put in place procedures and protocols to make it return to where it was before we get to a vaccine? Is it possible to get there? Well, look, I'm in the business of reality. As a futurist, I can guarantee you that in my audiences over 25 years, at least 1/3 of the audience has never liked my message. They've never liked my story. They've never liked the trends that I've put on the table, because I'm in the business of reality. And some people see the future and see a threat. Innovators see the same future and see an opportunity. And when I'm putting in place the disruptive trends which have taken organizations like Kodak and Blockbuster and Motorola and Research in Motion, BlackBerry, organizations which failed to innovate, industries which failed to adapt to reality. And I'm worried about the meetings industry right now, because I think the same darn thing is happening in the context of COVID-19. I think we're spending all this time to try to put in place protocols and safety procedures, and if we just do the right things, we'll all go back to where we were. Here's the problem. You can put in every single safety protocol you ever want at a convention center, at a meeting, at a conference. The people who spend money on these things, the CEO of organizations, individuals themselves are not going to choose to go. Because if we're not sending our people back to the office, if we're not sending our people back to work, they sure as heck aren't going to be hopping on a plane and going to Las Vegas. I'm in the business of reality, and that's the cold, hard truth that I came to accept quite some time ago. And look, my entire reason for existence on the stage has been to put in perspective the reality of what occurs if you don't accept reality. The context of what is occurring here, it's almost like it's, Napster days. where we had this, big, massive change in how people consumed music, and this big, massive change in the infrastructure by which people consumed music. And obviously, this virtual world is something new. It is changing at a furious pace with all kinds of innovative ideas. And you have to wonder where we're going to end up. This is all exacerbated by the political situation that exists, particularly in the US, because there is a deep schism throughout society. And look, I've always tried to address the issue of the future and the issue of politics in a very delicate way on stage. I'm Canadian, and I've got to try to remove myself from the reality of what is occurring. But what I would explain is, look, the society a little pre-pandemic was a little bit like the Jetsons meeting the Flintstones. One of the episodes, I've always used the story of the Jetsons on stage to put in perspective how quickly our future is evolving. And I would explain that, look, in society today, it's almost like, the Jetsons are meeting the Flintstones. People who adapt to the future, aligned to change, aligned to disruption, and those who just prefer that the world would stay the same. Well, here we are in COVID-19, and we're seeing the Jetsons and the Flintstones play out in the political environment in terms of what we are doing with masks. And this is the issue that is coming into the meetings industry and these very early attempts to try to come back to some form of normal. So in this social media Facebook group last night, there was some heated discussion when the report went live that there were some actual positive cases with this event in Orlando. And as I say, nobody knows if it occurred there or if this occurred on the travels home or if it was community spread. But the reality is, emotions are running hot, particularly with the denial. And I want you to read this quote, which came out on this group last night and was subsequently deleted. This is the perspective of somebody who was at the event. The reality is, if you were attended this meeting, if you were willing to put yourself, the reality is that if you attended, you were willing to put yourself at risk of getting COVID. If you are afraid of that, then don't attend. Also, prior to COVID, people got the flu and other sickness from being on airplanes and being at conferences and events. It's the nature of world and travel. COVID has been blown way out of proportion by many. Read that. Think about that. That's the perspective which is being brought into the organizations, the conferences, the events that you as a meeting professional, as an MPI professional, as an event planner, are trying to cope with. There are going to be people who are going to come to your meetings, your events, and regardless of the safety protocols that you put in place, regardless of the distancing protocols you put in place, regardless of everything you do, there are going to be those who will choose to discount the reality of where we are, what is occurring. How can we possibly innovate and bring this industry back in that context? Is this industry, is my industry, is your industry having its Napster moment? And are we likely to wake up 10 years from now and realize that somebody came along like Spotify and completely changed and fundamentally disrupted and forever transformed a massive global industry? And you were not part of it because you were clinging to a belief that all we had to do was put in place some safety protocols in the context where no CEO is going to be willing to send their people to an off-site event. If they're not sending them back to work, they're not going to send them to Vegas or Orlando for a conference. I think what we've got to do is we've got to continue to figure out what we can do to innovate in the context of this space. And I've been doing that since February. I have invested 2,500 plus hours in trying to figure out how do I take my basement and turn it into a broadcast studio, because my industry isn't coming back. I do not believe that I will be on stage before 2022, 2023. I might never be on stage again. Who knows how this is going to unfold? All I've got is my virtual broadcast studio, which I have right here. I have accepted the reality of where I'm going forward in the future. Are you? Or do you believe that all we need to do is put in place some safety protocols and all will be well and we'll return to where we were before? In my humble opinion, I don't think it's going to unfold like that. And look, I understand there's pain, I understand there's hurt, I understand there's massive economic problems and disruptions. I mean, every time I went to Las Vegas and I would get on stage, I would spend time with the AV crew, with the production crew, with the people backstage, because they were the hard workers that were helping to ensure that my event would be a success. And I understand tens of thousands of them are now unemployed. I understand we are seeing massive economic, devastation in the event industry, in the conference industry, in the travel industry. But that doesn't mean that we can press a magic button and all of a sudden go back. Because I think the societal rift that exists, the politicization that has occurred, means that regardless of what we do, we won't be going back. So how do we innovate in the context of where we are today and what we can possibly accomplish? These are tough and difficult issues. I'm in the business of reality. Are you in a mindset in which you are willing to accept the reality of what is occurring around us? That's the big issue. I think what we really need in this industry is we need people with vision. We need people with disruptive ideas. We need people who are willing to really take the risk in terms of what we can do in the context of where we are. Look, a lot of people don't like virtual. I would love to be back on stage. I would love the excitement of getting in front of several thousand people to help them understand what comes next and what we need to do about it. But I'm not going back, and neither are you for quite some time. So how do we innovate in the context of where we are today? How do we avoid our Napster moment? How do we be more like Spotify? I think that is our biggest challenge, and we need to address that sooner rather than later, because otherwise we are killing any chance for this industry to come back cold dead in its tracks. Futurist Jim Carroll, thank you for watching.